All right, Tennessee, why don't we get started? Why don't you give a quick introduction about BPEP, and probably I can take over and talk a couple of lines about each of the speakers and then go from there?
Yeah, okay.
Awesome.
Thank you very much again for everyone attending this workshop. We are excited again to have you all. I know most of you are repeat offenders. We have seen you in the previous workshops, and we are happy that you can make it today. And we have a very good lineup of speakers today. Unfortunately, this is the second time happening to me in this workshop. Last time we got Zoom bombed. And this time my computer bombed. Anyway, so BPEP is a group of Berkeley postdocs, UC Berkeley, and we have also one postdoc from LBL, Munish, and we are about 5 now, and we are actively seeking members. So if you are inclined into helping other postdocs, helping yourself in this entrepreneurship realm, we're happy to give you detailed information on BPEP. So the whole idea is kind of foster entrepreneurship in postdocs and also graduate students, but principally in postdocs. And we have a very good website where we have lots of resources and materials. So so we are happy again you come here, and I'm very delighted that all the 3 speakers could make it today. And thank you very much for your time and for the wisdom that you're gonna share to us today. And I will give it to Naresh. And as always, when things didn't work, we'll punt it to Naresh. So it's our and thank you, Naresh, for taking care of this again.
Excellent, Tennessee. Thank you for organizing. Tennessee was leading this effort, putting everything together. Thank you for all that work, and welcome everybody. Good evening. We have 3 fantastic speakers. 2 of them I know really very well. Ritu Bansal was a postdoc at UC Berkeley. She used to work in the lab above us. And then since then, she's moved on to a bunch of startups. And right now she is, let me check, Senior Director for Process Research and Development at Zymochem. And previously she's worked with Bold Threads and MicroWorks. It's a long list of startups she's been working. So I thought she'll have a lot of knowledge to share to all of us today. And we have Björn Harink, who is, principal scientist at Leiden Measurement Technology. He was a postdoc at LBNL. I'm right. Am I right, Björn?
No, I was a postdoc at UC San Francisco and Stanford. And I am one of the founders of the Bay Area postdocs. So that's why I know all the postdoc organizations.
Excellent. Again, this is your first startup. So I think that you bring a fresh perspective from an early stage startup. And then we have Tsang, very good friend. He's the co-founder of Postdoc Industry Exploration Program. BPEP and PIPE were started around the same times. I think they're a year senior to us. Since then, he's gone on to work with a bunch of startups as well. Right now, he's a manager for customer engagement and experience at Inscopix. Again, a celebrated resume. He's been working with a few startups, and without further ado, I think what we're going to do this in terms of format, we'll have the speakers talk about the experiences. It's a free flow. Please feel free to ask questions to anybody. And once they go through the stories, about 5-10 minutes, again, we won't stop you if you want to go longer. Once you finish your story, what I'll do is I'll engage you guys in a panel discussion and open up the floor for questions. And how about we start with Ritu first? Ritu Bansal.
Thank you so much, Naresh. It's a pleasure to, I live in Albany, not very far from Berkeley, but while you was talking about it, it just seems like such a different world for me now. It's just been 7 years since I left UC Berkeley, but your world just changes upside down. So a little bit about myself. I have a PhD. My bachelor's undergraduation was in pharmaceutical sciences. Then I did my PhD from India. which was in chemical engineering, but it was actually more of fermentation and downstream processing. So my PhD dissertation was actually in protein purification. So, but even while it was all chemical engineering, I had this innate curiosity about doing fundamental science because, like, I've never done it. I don't know what it means because all I did during my PhD and master's were mass balances and process flow diagrams. So that took me to do one postdoc where I was doing protein NMR, structure determination, and all. And then I moved on to UC Berkeley, where I met Naresh, who, when he said, was working in a lab close to ours. And I think you were working with lipids, right, a little bit?
Yes, delivery of RNAi.
Yes. So I joined the lab of Hiroshi Nikaido, who retired recently at the nice ripe age of 90 plus.
Damn.
And Hiroshi is stalwart in the antibiotic and resistance of antibiotics, and he has written books and everything. So I joined his lab, and it was a very interesting story. He called me and he said he wanted me to use whatever I had developed during my PhD, a process of surfactant-based system to extract proteins from E. coli. So he wanted me to use, which was of course for separations and extractions of proteins, industrial proteins and enzymes at industrial scale. He said he wanted me to use that to look at the lipid assembly in mycobacterial cells to understand the drug resistance in mycobacteria. And I'll be very honest, I didn't understand what he was talking about. But he was such a big name. And I actually moved to UC Berkeley, and my husband was at UCSF. And the plan was I will come to the US and start looking for something. So it was a good opportunity. I started and really had fun. I mean, in a lot of ways, it was fun because it was in Hiroshi's lab. It was like each of us were given independent projects, and even if we didn't then turn up for 1 month, there was no one to say anything. He never bothered. So it was that kind of an environment, like complete research freedom. And I worked a lot on lipids of mycobacteria, corynebacteria. It was all separation, but separation processes to understand the fundamentals of mycobacterial drug resistance. So long story short, I started my postdoc, moved on to be an associate scientist at UC Berkeley. And what I thought would be a 2-year thing turned out to be an 8-year stint at UC Berkeley. And of course, a few reasons, family, I had my kids, two daughters at that time. I was stuck in the infinite loop of visa, becoming from India, not having a green card. At that time, at least, it was difficult to land up with any job in the industry without no one would sponsor your visa at that time. So it was I was trained in process engineering, and when I did my PhD, it was all catered to the pharma and the biotech industry. But by the time I got my green card and I was like all set and ready to leave academia and Hiroshi's lab, one thing was certain: I never had the dilemma of should I continue in academia or industry. I always wanted to join the industry because that was my fundamental training in my PhD. The only thing is I didn't know which direction to go to because I was trained as a process engineer. Then I did my PhD in all sorts of different things. Protein structure determination and protein purification, of course, was my fundamentals. And then at Hiroshi's lab, it was all lipids, lipid separation, lipid analysis, like a bunch of stuff, that comes with postdoc. I did have good publications there. I managed like a couple of publications in PNS. But by the time I was about to leave, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I tried in the normal companies that we all thought, at least I thought at that time, like this is where I should go, like Genentech and stuff like that. Because I was trained in pharma, and Genentech, I remember I applied and they called me and I had a fantastic interview, and the hiring manager loved me and everything, and they held me up for 2 months, and after that they told me no. After 2 months, and I was like, the guy was great, but it was just like, why did you make me wait for 2 months? And being a naive person, I thought I'd get this job, and I did apply elsewhere. So it's always difficult to transition out of academia into the industry if you want to do that. And I guess for people who are also thinking about, should I continue into academia for a position, that is an additional thing. I've seen people struggling through that, and we all know how difficult it is to get a tenure track position in academia. So it's always that, I think that period is very challenging for anyone. But what I did observe, fortunately, was that I'm in the Bay Area, and there are a lot of these little companies around. And one thing I had was a very, very interdisciplinary background, like, process engineering and ability to look deeper into science, into research, dig into it. A lot of analytical science experience because of working with all kinds of molecules and proteins to polysaccharides, and especially in lipids. So, and then I realized that the world has changed since I did my PhD, and there is this whole bunch of companies that are making this alternate food, biomaterial, biomanufacturing. And I'm like, why did I forget what I did in my PhD? It was all biomanufacturing. So I started looking into those companies, and it was easier. And I think it was also easier because there are just so many startups around. And now I know that there are many of these around, and actually there's a super big dearth of talent. I now am on the other side, and I'm always looking for people. And it's just that the bridge between academia and these universities like UC Berkeley and these companies is just not built well for people to approach and start applying. But then I joined a company called Just in San Francisco, where we were isolating proteins from plants to make egg replacements. I worked there for almost 1.5 to 2 years. Then I moved to a company in Emerald, which is closer to home, called Bold Threads, where I was isolating spider cell protein that was expressed in yeast, developing the processes for growing the cells, isolating proteins from there. And my world is like taking a process, developing it in the lab, and scaling it up. So I've been in that area, production, biomanufacturing, scale up. So worked on spider silk proteins where we were trying to make spider silk-based textiles. Then I moved to bio-based leather, basically doing growing mycelia or the roots of mushroom by solid-state fermentation and trying to make bio-leather out of it. So it's been an amazing journey and completely different from what I was doing at UC Berkeley. But it's just because of my training in places like UC Berkeley, being allowed to really do my work peacefully at that place, because there is absolutely no scope for me to do anything peacefully now in the startup world. There's just a lot of, it's a very fast-paced environment. And if you are on the leadership track, then it's still more fast track, because in addition to all the technical responsibilities, there's a lot of management, hiring stuff that goes on. So it's been quite a journey. By the way, Naresh and Tadasi, when I was looking at the points that you guys have put forth, I'm like, how did you know all these problems are there in startups? Because these are exactly all the problems in startups. So that's just my introduction. I think I've gone beyond 5 minutes. So I'll stop there, but absolutely feel free to ask me any questions. I'll be very happy to share all my experiences.
Cool. That's a good background. I think that's a good format. I think you talked about what was happening in your academic lab, and then your transition to different companies. Maybe you can keep that format, Chris and Björn. Björn, you want to go next? And then after that, we can jump into some other questions.
Sure. I did prep a few slides. We'll see where this goes. Because I think I'm a bit of an odd duck here. As in, my current company is not my company, but I'm working on a company that's going to spin out of this company. Huh. But I can give a tiny bit of a background on where I'm coming from, and then I have a few slides of the company if there's time, because I do think I work on very interesting stuff, and I'm very eager to tell you a bit about it.
Please do.
So I studied in the Netherlands at a small university called the University of Twente. It's mostly known in metamaterials and biomedical backgrounds. I studied biomedical engineering there and went into more of a biophysics direction and optics and microelectronics and within MEMS, and then eventually also microfluidics. I did my PhD there, actually as more of an engineer in a biology lab, trying to grow cells in microfluidic chips to demonstrate like the micro environment of biology, which is led me to, I've been in and out of industry a little bit. After my PhD, I went on to work for a small family company that worked in greenhouses, as in agriculture, completely different. So I thought, I could calculate microfluidics. How difficult can it be to do macrofluidics? But I worked there in greenhouses with a lot of electronics design. I worked on like remote sensing stuff. And then I got still, again, interested in academia and looked around for a postdoc. So I found this dual position between UCSF and Stanford. At UCSF, I was working with Joseph DeRisi, and a sub-lab of that with Kurt Thorne, who is very known for his microscopy. And at Stanford with Polly Fordyce on microbead technologies. And then I went on after my postdoc, which funny enough, I started my postdoc with the idea I will not stay in academia. For a lot of people, that's a strange way of doing it. But I think academia is interesting, but I never see myself as a professor, especially because I'm more of an engineer. I'm an engineer in science, let me put it this way. And then somehow something popped up and Leiden measurement technology was there, looking for people with microfluidics and microelectronics backgrounds, but then using it instead of in biomedical devices or biomedical research for space exploration. So it's a different field, but some of the principles and stuff that I've been working on still work there, because in this case, it's searching for life. So I don't know if I can quickly share my screen.
I made you a co-host, so you should be able to.
Okay, let me see if I can.
Björn, while you're getting that, just some context, like how long were your postdoc for? I'm just trying to get a story out of this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was a postdoc for 3 years. I originally wanted to be a postdoc for, this is not working. For 2 years, of course, I wanted to, for my purpose of being in the Bay Area and a postdoc was ending up at a startup. But the easiest way to get a job abroad, visa-wise, is doing a postdoc, a J1 visa. So my idea was I built a network and then I moved to other places. And also that network will really help me if I would be in a startup or if I start something myself. So that was my original plan. And I wanted to do it 1.5 years, 2 years. But of course, I got sucked into writing some papers and finishing up some research. So it took 3 years. And then, but I eventually ended up with a small startup. So I will try to be quick. I just think it's just too interesting to not tell a little bit of Leiden measurement technology. So Leiden measurement technology, these are the people. I think one of the most important thing in entrepreneurship and in startups is like the people. Like even if you talk with investors, they will want to talk about the people. And even your technical idea will usually be less important than the people you work with. So these are the people I work with. Nathan Bremmel, he started the company. He's the CEO. I purposely did not put all the titles in there because we're such a small company, we do everything. So I'm a de facto CTO, so to say, but my technical title is principal scientist. And Brooks is a chemist. Lukman is in photonics. He's a very renowned photonics expert. He worked a lot on super resolution microscopy. Then we have Anne. Anne is operational, but she has actually a major in English and did her PhD in humanities at UC Berkeley. She is absolutely a valuable asset, but it does not come from a technical background. And then we have Brian Meyer, mechanical engineer, masters, who's been around with us for a while. So Leiden Measurement Technology is a tiny company. We're only 6 people, but we make scientific instruments and specific prototype instruments for NASA. And this is not a traditional startup. We don't have any vested interest. We don't have stock, anything like that. We have a very good salary, a very good pension, our retirement fund, but we develop technologies. Basically, I'm a PI in a small company. What I think is the advantage here is that we really develop things till the end. So with NASA, we actually have to develop something and give it to them. So we work on life detection instruments with the idea of going from sample to data for life detection and exploration on other planets. So one of the places that we work, we have a lot of missions on. So this is a question for the audience. Which 3 satellites are these? Anyone?
Satellites or planets or?
These are, well, heavenly bodies. These are planets or moons. Which ones are they? I think 2 of them we definitely know. It's the moon left up, our moon, and then we have Earth, and then the one at the bottom, that is a moon of Jupiter, called Europa. It's one of the Galilean moons. Why is that interesting? Well, a while back, Hubble telescope found some plumes coming out of the poles of Europa. What does that mean? Well, with spectroscopic data, they found that these plumes actually contain water. So that is a very interesting thing. Why are these plumes coming out of there? So one of the theories is that this is actually, instead of an icy world, which they first thought, it's actually an ocean world. So because of the gravitational forces of Jupiter, it squeezes like a ball and warms up the ice and spews it out of its balls. So the idea would be that it's a vast, vast ocean world that probably has more water than we have on Earth, even though it's way, way smaller, but it's because it's completely covered and very, very deep. So there's actually a mission going there called Europa Clipper. It's supposed to go there in 2024, October, but who knows? And a lot of stuff we work on is for future missions. We really work on what is called technology readiness level 1 to 5. It's very, very low. 12 means it's going on a mission. And 1 is like really concept building. So we work on instruments that go on a planned mission or an idea of a mission, maybe in 20 years, 10 years from now, that drills into the core or through the ice and then measures stuff. And then we work on the measuring stuff, on the getting the fluids out, see if there's life in it, detect stuff. So of course that image there was a bit of a ridiculous artist impression of how it's going to look like, but it's more going to look like this. So we work with a company called Stone Aerospace that built a cryo drill, a drill that actually uses a laser to drill through the water. And then we worked on some of the instruments on board that sample stuff and does spectroscopy. This is an example of some of the technologies we've worked on, like a little chip that can separate things. We've been doing a bunch of the electronics. Here's a lot of fluidics, and this is some of the boxes that go inside. Some of the instruments we work on are also kind of like benchtop instruments that go to JPL or to NASA, not necessarily to go to space, but for scientists to really look into what can we do with this very, very new technologies. Because NASA wants to test the shit out of these technologies before they send it to space. So we work on a very, very early stage stuff. So we've been in the news a couple times. We are involved in a lot of projects. These are all small business innovation and research grants. So each agency in the US, like the Department of Energy, Department of Defense, they have grants for small businesses, like companies 50 or smaller. And we have a lot of those. We're very good at getting those. We develop a lot of technologies. And of course, it's NASA, so they really like their funny acronyms, like Archimedes is one of those drill things, a really cool high impact method for exploring down into your open surface. So that's just the funny thing in it. But also frequently it does not look like spaceflight stuff, but actually desktop stuff that we give to NASA and JPL to really for them scientists to really look, can we use this technology to find life on other planets? So they use Martian soil samples of simulants and stuff. So one of the other things is that I'm working on, so this company is an SBIR company. and we don't have vesting and any of this stuff in here. But because we have all this cool technology, and unfortunately space products are usually one-off and it's not a big market to grow. So we also look at all these technologies combined with what I did at Stanford on technologies. We are working on a spin-off company called Leiden Biomedical Technology for now. So we are combining my research that I did at Stanford on microbeads combined with optics and electronics that we have developed at LMT to really get into this journey of spinning out a company for point of care diagnostics. So we've been through what is called Creative Destruction Lab from the University of Toronto, which is somewhat of an incubator, but it's a year-long program that people have. We have kinds of mentors from big industries like CTO from Boeing and that kind of people that help out and drag us through what to do to build up a startup. So we're now finally like in-house developing a prototype, and we're slowly looking for investors and stuff. So the core technology is developed at LMT with some of the science I've done before, and we're currently aiming for highly multiplexed STI and drug resistance testing. So that's the hashtag Space Tech for Earth. So this is the team, and there's some interesting links I can share you later about some of the space stuff. So I just wanted to give you this really brief thing because I think we're doing really, really cool stuff here.
Awesome, Björn. Thank you for that. One thing that stood out, for the audience and myself is going to be, there are going to be opportunities at startups. There could be a mission, the main mission that you're working on, exploring the space, trying to find life there. But then because the market is small, and there are lateral applications that can arise from your other technology, and there will be opportunities. And one of the points that stood out was how important you will be as a part of a small team. You'll never find that importance at a big company. I don't think so, because you'll be doing multiple things. We'll come back to this discussion, but let's go on to Chris. But thank you, Björn.
Okay. Thanks, Naresh. Tadesse. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I used to host events at UC Berkeley myself, so I know how much work is involved in organizing these events and bringing people in. But when you have them and you can share your experiences, it's a great feeling. So if any of you here, want to, give back and pay it forward, I highly recommend you take up Naresh's request to sit on the BPEP board. So it's also an honor here to be with the other panelists and to hear their stories. So I know there's a few discussion topics that were sent out to us. I will save those for the Q&A and maybe just introduce myself through the transition that I made from academia to industry. So like many of you here, I was faced with 3 choices when it came to transitioning out of my postdoc. I was at UC Berkeley, molecular cell biology department, life scientist, neuroscientist. One, go to academia, become a PI, go to a company, just start an industry career there, or entrepreneurship, build a company. The choice between those 3 were pretty easy for me. Entrepreneurship seemed like the most difficult path, right? So I had no asset to build, any business from. Academia also seemed like a difficult path. I published several papers during my PhD, but had no publications in my postdoc. So that left me with one choice, to go look for a job in industry. My experience in academia was pretty informative, I would say. Building tools, was the major thematic of my PhD and postdoc. And the thing with building tools is you either build it and it's useful for everyone, or you fail and it's useful for no one. So the postdoc, really made me acutely aware of how important it is to pay attention to your users and the requirements. So, while I was doing my postdoc, optogenetics and optopharmacology were two different approaches to interrogating neural circuits with light. I was on the optopharmacology side, and building optopharmacological tools was more complicated. Like you needed chemistry, and the implementation was limited. So you can make these chemical tools and throw them on brain slices, but you really couldn't. It was hard to interrogate neural circuits in the living brain. So optogenetics, just being a simple plasmid that you introduce into cells, was rapidly adopted by the neuroscience community because of its ease of use and wide-reaching applications. So I knew I wanted to work in industry, and I wanted to work for a life science tools company making innovative products. I didn't know much about working for companies, nor did I know much about the companies in the Bay Area. And it was 2000, it was like mid 2009, 2010, when I started to have these thoughts of like transitioning out of my postdoc to a company. And, if you wind back the clock to 2009, 2010, that was like one of the, those are horrible years to look for jobs in industry. There was a recession going on, and unlike my esteemed colleagues here who are engineers who have really really applicable applied skills, I came from the life sciences. So I stayed in my postdoc and started the postdoc industry exploration program to look at different companies in the Bay Area. And I wanted to help myself, but I also wanted to help all the other postdocs that were in the same position as me. So what we did was we partnered with companies, and we did on-site visits to learn more about the company and what it's like to work there. And really it's just an opportunity for postdocs to network with employees of the company. So we learned about companies, from big companies to small startups. And Ritu here, she said that she worked at Bolt Threads. We visited Bolt Threads in Emeryville. And we also visited Bolt Threads when it was just a startup of two people. I think it was Dan Widmeyer and David Breslauer. That was the company, those two people, and that was our startup visit. Just talking to those two guys. So based on my based on the job conditions, my experience with peptide chemistry, and my desire to explore non-bench positions, I landed at Inscopix, which is a peptide company in the Bay Area, as a technical business developer. And maybe that's like, for those of you who are thinking about transitioning out of academia to industry, a good tip to look for a job is to really just leverage the skills that you have, and try to get in to a company that is in need of those skills. I'd say, unlike my time in 2009, 2010, I'd say this time right now is probably one of the best times ever to be looking for work in a company. Everyone is looking for people right now, and it's really, really hard to find the right people. Hiring managers might wait months to a year to find the right person. So even if you're not ready right now, and you're close to ready, throw out your resumes and start applying, because you can negotiate a later start date. So as a technical business developer, I was developing strategic relationships with other tech companies, mostly startup companies, and looking for ways to work together and create something that was more than the sum of the parts. So Inscopix is not a startup company. It had 100 people when I started. The company was owned by a Belgian company that had hundreds of people, and then that company was owned by a Japanese company which had thousands of people. So I didn't technically transition from academia into a startup company, but I did find my way into a couple afterwards. So Inscopix was it was a generic company, and it really faced it wasn't making peptides in any innovative way that really differentiated itself right? So it faced like super stiff competition from Chinese companies who could do things like a lot cheaper, and the headcount, you can see the headcount just like start to like whittle down from 100 to 60. And then eventually like my division was centralized to Belgium. And personally, I had no like desire at all to go to Belgium to work there. So I went looking for another company. And then, having worked with several startup companies, I formed a relationship with Loudness Biosciences, which doesn't exist anymore. At the time, this small company, this small startups, combined peptides. So like that's where the Inscopix came in. They combined the peptides with peptide, they combined the peptide libraries with mass spectrometry to profile the substrate specificity for proteases. So the technology was called substrate profiling by mass spectrometry. Inscopix made the peptide libraries, the UCSF group did the profiling by mass spectrometry. So with this substrate profiling, you can make protease assays and lead compounds to inhibit proteases. So Alumnus was, a super early stage startup company. It was essentially squatting inside a lab at UCSF. It operated as a service provider for pharma companies. They had like sporadic contracts, and I joined the company to help them win more contracts. And then eventually the co-founder, who was like a postdoc, just wanted more stability and found a job at UCSD. And then the PI co-founder, he just wanted to go, bigger. It was like too much work to do the service provision. So he wanted to, take his discovery platform, identify a lead compound, and then turn it into a drug, right? Because, this guy is in the pharmaceutical chemistry division at UCSF. So he had connections and started companies himself and was on the board of several companies in the Bay Area, drug companies in the Bay Area. So I wanted to make it like an enzyme inhibitor, but it was not really clear like what the product was going to be. So it went into an exploration phase, and we like formed a team, and just like the panelists here, we joined like a little startup program, so Startup 101 at UCSF. It was like this experiential team-based class, covering topics important to starting, and scaling, a for-profit commercial venture. It was a super cool experience. It was exciting, but that was just too early of a startup for me and the stage of my life. So I needed a job with more stability, and that's when I discovered Inscopix. So I would say I was pretty much bumbling around in my career and waiting for a company like Inscopix to come along. So Inscopix is a neuroscience-focused company making innovative tools to make an impact on research and how pharma companies discover new targets. So we map, brain circuits, and we help pharma companies target circuits for CNS discovery. And when I joined Inscopix had received a $10 million Series A funding round to build a commercial team, right? So customer success was one of the major foci. The users of the platform were struggling with the technology. And really the customer success team was a differentiator for a company because it also faced stiff competition from do-it-yourself approaches. The technology had been published in a paper, and people were looking at the paper and looking at the patents and making their own versions of it. So one way to differentiate the company was to provide the support that would be needed to make customers successful, make them adopt the technology, spread the good word, and go through like an organic growth phase. So the idea was to really help the company cross the chasm, if you will. The group here has probably heard that term before. So it was easy to get the technology into the hands of super early adopters, a lot of tinkerers. And then what we wanted to do was move the technology into what's called the early majority, where the technology starts to become a more complete product, easier to use. So, I joined the company as a field application scientist. there, really just helping, learning the technology and then helping labs learn how to use the technology. So, with a startup company, there's a bit more like flexibility. Like I didn't know how to use the technology. I think it was like so new that there were a lot of people who didn't know how to use the technology. So when I came in, I worked a lot in the lab to learn it myself. And then once I understood like all the nuances, I helped train and support like all the other labs like around the world. But now, like, when as companies mature, then they can become a little bit more picky and there's more expert users out there. So within a company too, you can have this kind of like, growth phase. Like, so for us, we had that $10 million and the whole point was to build a team. So if you get in there early, then there's opportunities, right? So I was quickly promoted to a manager, right? So recruiting became a major responsibility of mine. Felt like I was doing it like 30–40% of my time, just like looking for people, and to really just expand the on-site stuff support globally. And then at the beginning of COVID, I took the customer success strategy online and led the implementation of a learning management system called IQ. So in some, Inscopix, it's a miniature microscope at its core. It was Scientist Magazine Life Science Innovation of the Year twice. Technology has been used in 150 publications, 3/4 of which are in the Nature Science Cell family. It's doing quite well. The company is in the hunt for a Series B investment to move to the translational space as we forge collaborations with pharma with our new CSO who came from Pfizer. So when I started, the company was 30 people, and now it's up to 90. So I'll stop there.
Wow, excellent. That's a great story, Chris. A couple of things that stand out for me is one, realizing your skills and leveraging them. And that's something that Ritu mentioned as well. She's got this industrial experience in a PhD, and then like she's combined that with protein extraction and so on, and applying that. I think that awareness that you mentioned for everybody on here, that's going to be super important. Just like opening up your mind, looking at the possibilities, and like Chris is right, like the Bay Area is the best in the world in terms of opportunities. It doesn't matter what your background was, that is past. The aptitude to learn and apply and work with other people, I think that will take you a long way. Well, cool. Thank you so much for those introductions. I'd like to take on to this next conversation style interaction where probably maybe Ritu you can start with this question where how was it different? Like talk about the adjustment moving from academia to startup environment. What was the major adjusting factors? What did you struggle with? And just along the same, start with that. Yeah.
Well, it is for me. It has always been good because it depends on what lab you come from, right? So I think for me, one of the things that I came from a lab where, as I mentioned, everybody was given independent projects. There was really not much. There were not many opportunities to interact or to do something out of the box. And that was something that the industry absolutely provided. So from that point of view, the transition was great. I was just craving for it. And it was like being completely invisible and then you become like out there. And my role has always been since then, like it's process development and scale up. So a lot of interaction with manufacturing folks, a lot of traveling. There is not much biomanufacturing in the US, so there is a lot of travel involved in Europe, wherever you need to go. So from that point of view, it was all good adjustment. I think the challenges are, of course, the mindset, because there is a competitive mindset in the industry. Although in startups, I would say there's very little politics. There's no scope for it in the beginning. But as the companies start growing, and I have always, like, the first company I joined was already 100 people. The second company I joined was around 90. When I left, it was around 125. The third one, when I joined, it was 25. By the time I left, it's, I think right now 140, and out of those, like 20 people I hired. So it's, when companies grow, and when these small companies grow, they bring in a lot of people. And it's really, really fun to build teams. And, if you're in the position where you're building teams and have that opportunity, but there is always the factor that there are people at the top also who may come from different cultures, which is very different from the company that you joined. So, for an example, in my area, when a company is small, there's not much manufacturing. But then when the company starts getting into manufacturing, the manufacturing folks come, and it's almost like they're from a different planet. So there is all those factors come in, and that I think is challenging, because I guess it's too much of a fast-paced change. If you're in a smaller company that is not growing as rapidly as the companies I have been in, then I think it will be less challenging. But in companies that grow from 25 to 100 in a year, and that is shooting for the moon, like changing the world. All the companies I've joined are like, all the companies want to change the world. It's all about sustainability, and which is my passion. But I think the fast growth can sometimes be a bit difficult to take care of, for sure. And it's mostly with people. It's all people dynamics. I hope that answered your question, Manoj.
That did. Thank you. Chris and Björn, what was your experiences like in terms of adjustment?
I can go, Chris.
Yeah.
So, like, I have never been in a very fast-paced growing startup. So the first company experience I had was in a family company that had 40 people, and that was like that for years. And I only worked there for 1.5 years. What I find very interesting, if you work for a family-style company or like a traditional company, or maybe outside of Silicon Valley company, I would say, because I think 90% of the companies are not like Silicon Valley companies. You do see all kinds of different people, and like academia is an artificially, like, a little bubble with only like hyper intelligent people, and in a classic company, you work with all kinds of people. You have to go to the workshop and talk to a mechanic, or you have to, it's different people you work with than in academia. So that's something I really enjoy. I actually, this was not a struggle. I feel like this is the real world, and academia is our little bubble, which I also love. I do miss having students around, and all the interesting talks that always are on campus. We don't have that in a small company. We have maybe summer students once in a while, which I really love. So adjustment is like, I come more from an engineering background, and I always felt hampered in academia, because a lot of stuff is like, we need to get into the next paper, but you could never finish some engineering stuff because you had to buy actual hardware for it. So for me, it was like I love that I work in a place like I am now. I feel like a PI. I write grants with my own ideas, because that's also one of the things that I think Ritu mentioned, is like, when you're outside in a company, like my experience as a postdoc was like, nobody was actually using all my talent. Now that I'm in a small company, they use every bit of my talent, like, and push me to learn new things. So my experience is great. It could be other people that have adjustments in it. Like I said, I come from a more engineering background, which is, I've seen people coming more from like pure science, basic science, biology background. That transition is going to be harder, I think, as talking to friends of mine than my personal experience. But yeah, I love like talking to more more people of the world when I move to a company.
Cool. Chris?
Yeah, thank you. I would say, one big thing that needs to change in your mindset as you move from academia to industry is the way what you think is important. In academia, the product is your brain, right? The discoveries that you're going to make, and experiments you're going to do, and mentorship, right? The next generation of scientists you're going to train. So you're always thinking about your own brand. Publishing, get your name out there, because your brain, your image is the product. When you move to a company, the focus shifts to the people who are going to pay you to keep your company alive. So it's very customer centric. The companies that I've worked at, there's a lot of just paying attention to what customers want, how big is the market, and building products that solve a problem for them. So like the switch, in academia, there's lots of opportunity to do discovery and go in different ways. In a product centric world, in industry, that discovery is more on discovering what customers want, and you try to make something that aligns with your business and what customers want. So really, like, all your activities, so there's no time for this this kind of scientific discovery in a product company. Your activities need to line up with the business objectives, and if your activities are not lined up with the business objectives, then resources are being totally mismanaged, right? And you probably get let go pretty quickly if you're not in line with the rest of the team. And when the business objectives change, your priorities and your responsibilities have to change too, to line up with it. So you got to be flexible and you got to be adaptable, right? So at our company, the priorities are set, at the beginning of the calendar year. So there's not any big surprises. Oh, we're going to completely pivot next week. They're set for the calendar year. It's different at different companies. If you work for a really big company, the product you're working on today might be for 3 years from now. If you're Björn, it's for like 20 years from now. So I'd say that is one of the things. Some people might find it easy to make that transition. Some people might find that hard because they love the freedom, the creativity, the discovery in academia.
Great, thank you, Chris. Just to paraphrase what you guys said, one thing that stands out is you're going to change your mindset from your product, your publications, to a company's needs. Almost nobody cares about your technology. It's about the product that people want, and is about keeping them happy. Everybody's selling. And the second thing is scaling. All the startups are trying to scale, and the role you're playing today might not be the same a year from now, because the needs are going to change. And unless we evolve with those needs, it's going to be hard to just stay around. We got to make room for other people to just scale. But if you have that mindset to scale, that'll be great. It'll be a good fit. Cool. The next question is, if you knew one thing before joining startups that would have made your life better or happier, what would that be?
I think one of the things, very short, getting to a minimal viable product. In academia, I had the luxury to be a perfectionist and get to the 99%. That is just not necessary in a company, and it's actually wasteful. So, getting to a minimal viable product, or something that works good enough, but it's not shiny, or you did 100,000 tests to make sure that R squared is 0.99. It's like, getting there. That's I had to learn that in the past few years.
Yeah. Ritu, Chris?
I think related to that, if like me, just knowing if the company had a good product market fit. So like the first company that I joined, it was still in that exploration phase of trying to find a good product market fit. Didn't know if it wanted to be a service provider company or a drug company. And some people love that phase. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not that it's an undesirable phase. Some people just love that, the idea of having something that's kind of like on the cusp, like they can kind of taste that there's something valuable there, but they don't know. And then they, they love like going, talking to different people and, fine tuning the product. So it fits the customer's needs perfectly. For me, it just wasn't like the right time for me to be doing that kind of exploration. I needed something with a little more stability. So for me, it was that particular piece.
Yeah, and that's a very good question. I think so. The kind of companies I have been in have been super creative. I would say making leather from mycelia, making cytosol-based textile, and my current company Zymochem, where we're doing classical fermentation downstream, but the products are always so cool. So there has been, I cannot complain that there was no scope for freedom or no scope. In fact, that's why, I think I was hired to bring in that. But the one thing that I think I wish I had learned right in my first company, and where there was again a lot of creativity, like how do you make egg-based products that taste like egg from plants, and it was just like bringing so many different fields and interacting with food people and process people and chefs who have their own temperament. So I think the one thing that I wish I knew better when I joined my first company was the ability to listen well and keep quiet, because that is something, when you are, at least that's how I was. I'm not at all saying that that's how everybody is, but that's something, this is something that probably, the other panelists spoke about, like really detaching yourself, being a little less egoistic and really thinking about how you take forward the team, how you take forward the company, and it's less about yourself. Nobody cares about, if you get your salary, you go home. And amidst all that, amidst the product, amidst the company, you have to just think of, okay, how can I make my career better? And the only way you can do it is really developing the patience, listening to people, and making sure that you're not sending the message that it's all about yourself. So I think that is something I would have done different. Unfortunately, those kind of trainings don't exist in academia. You're taught to be a very good scientist. In fact, there is always the push to be able to speak up, put your thoughts forth and all that. But there were several leadership programs that I went through in my company that sort of helped me to bring that out. I think that is a very important factor, especially if you're looking at growing on the leadership ladder and building teams and then managing teams. I mean, it's not easy to take big teams forward and move them with the company. As Chris said, product is important, and the goals of the milestones of the company are important. And if you want to do that, you should have the ability to listen. So I wish I had that better when I transitioned from academia to industry.
Listening is a great skill for every human being, I think, no matter where they are. Thank you for bringing that point up. I just, I'm going to cover two more topics before opening up to the audience. Just want to make sure we cover the fundamentals. One, the first question is, you all touched upon very briefly. Chris, maybe you can start with this about uncertainty. There is financial uncertainty, there's technical uncertainty, and there's market uncertainty. And how did you deal with those things? And is there anything people can be better prepared about dealing with uncertainty?
Yeah, Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's research. You know, you want to, if you want to go into these startup companies with your eyes like wide open, for sure. If you're going to go all in, so that you can set your own expectations appropriately. Financial uncertainty. So I had those two startup companies. At Alonis, there was completely like no financial like stability. There's a lot of financial uncertainty there because it was contract to contract, fee for service, and I was more like a contractor there. Added Inscopix, the financial uncertainty, security. So as everyone here, as you transition from academia to industry, some of you might be faced with companies that they say in their contract this is like at will employment, right? So this is in California has at will, and so what that means is that an employer can terminate an employee at any time for any reason except in a legal one, or for no reason without incurring legal liability. And then likewise, an employee is free to leave a job at any time for any reason or no reason with no adverse legal consequences. So so on the company side, what's the pro of this? So for the company, I mean, they can terminate people faster and it's easier. They can be more nimble on their operations and make their bottom line better, and they can focus on employee merit. So if you owned a company, why would you want to have this? So for example, if you hired a bunch of people and they're all on contract and you had to honor the contracts, and then COVID hits and you have no customers, and so now you can't get rid of anyone, you're going to be bankrupt pretty quick. Right, so rules like this are in place, and then likewise, but the con of this is that your employees can just quit whenever they want because they're not on contract, right? So in the Bay Area, where there's lots of competition, lots of companies to work for, if they don't like working for you, they're out, right? They're gonna leave you and go and get poached. They're gonna be poached by a competing company pretty easily, and so hiring right now is very, very challenging. Hiring good talent is very challenging. So when you find good talent, you don't want your employees to just leave on a dime, because if you're in the middle of a major project and there's deliverables and you have someone leave, that could be disastrous for the employee or for the company. So in terms of financial stability, I mean, you get paid better in industry than you do in academia, but there is this, the company could lay me off at any time. So that's just something you're just going to have to live with. And there again, it's research. You research the company and how's it doing? How is its product line doing? Is it the bread and butter of the company? It's bringing in all the cash. If it is, you're probably pretty safe on that product line. The technical uncertainty. There's always technical uncertainties when you're in a product focused company. So how it works at our company is you have the marketing people. They'll go out and they scope out the market and they try to figure out if we build this thing for customers, like how many customers will there be if we build this, and they're trying to figure out the needs. And once they decide that there's enough potential paying customers out there, then it goes to the engineers, and they'll receive a list of requirements for the product that we envision building, and then they have to look through these technical requirements and say, yes, we can do this. No, we can do this. That's one component of it. But there's also this time component, right? Because you're building a product, and then your commercial team, your sales team are like, give us this product as fast as you can so that we can sell it and generate more revenue. So for example, if you are a product focused company and you're making a consumer product, I mean, you're going to want to make that thing like before Christmas time, right? So that you can start generating like revenue during the biggest like selling like time of the year. So the engineers have to figure out, can we make this by this date with the resources that we have, you know, and people might be involved in different projects. Like how much bandwidth do we have left? And then, yeah, the market uncertainty, yeah, that just comes down to like good marketing and figuring out, you know, what's a real pain point for customers and what are they, you know, really willing to pay for. You know, the recent platform that we just built, our InView system, which was like one of those life science innovations of the year, doing a 2-color. We just built it like the end of last year, but this was like one of the first requests, you know, that we had like when I joined the company. I think it was the first request when the company launched, but it didn't materialize until now, like almost 10 years later, because we needed the technology to catch up. But the market was there. Like we knew the market was there because they just kept asking for it nonstop.
Thank you. That's a phenomenal summary of experiences. Björn, where are you on your thoughts on uncertainties when you joined? Like, what did you think about in terms of uncertainty and the risk you were willing to take? And I just want to make a disclaimer to all the audience that, you know, by no means I'm trying to discourage you guys, but we just want to set that wheel spinning about how we want to think about these things, so you're better prepared.
Yeah, I'll say 2 things about this. One of them, when I came for an interview with a small company, and I saw that it looked more like a garage where people were tinkering in, which looked a bit like I had my parents come and visit. It's like, oh, this looks like your attic room when you were a teenager taking apart TVs and stuff. And in the beginning, I was there. I was like, ooh, do I want to do this? This does not look like a stable income place. But in the end, this is an SBIR company. We're very successful in getting these grants in, and we have no loans. We've been basically profitable. You can take a tiny bit of a profit on these types of grants since the beginning. So it's a different experience for me. I've been working there for 3.5 years. The second thing I want to say is, like, sure, you can do a postdoc for a very long time, but that's because postdocs are very highly skilled and extremely underpaid. So you're taking a financial risk by staying a postdoc too long. So I just wanted to flip that coin, because I've been in a lot of postdoc advocacy and always advocating, you know, that a postdoc is fun, but don't stay around too long. And 60% of postdocs will never become faculty. So, you know, a company will be it, and being paid more, even though it might be at a startup where you might, you know, the funding runs out or you're not a good match, but you can always find another company, especially in the Bay Area. It's like
you'd have learned a lot more. You'd have learned a lot more than being a postdoc. I'm totally in agreement with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying that people should not do a postdoc and go for the academic career, and some people are just great at it and should do it, but like there's these other possibilities out there, and financial security is a difficult. It's like what, you know, I find being a postdoc too long also I find financial insecurity, especially when it comes to your pension and saving for a house or whatever. It's like, you know, that's another thing I just wanted to put there.
Good points. Good points. Ritu.
Yeah, I mean, I have not been in companies where they were having financial issues that, you know, getting funding and all this not the problem so far. I'm lucky, I would say, but there is always the risk of layoffs. There is always the risk of company changing direction. So, you know, that is always there, and we just have to live with it. And as John mentioned, you know, there is that risk even when you're in academia and you're a postdoc, you're just paid so less. I don't think anyone will pay you what you're getting paid at postdoc. Nothing pays you as less. So if you're just talking about finances, then the world is definitely better out there. But the other insecurity issues are, direction in which the company is going. Are you going to be satisfied with what is happening? Those things are, bigger, I would say, insecurity issues, right? Would you like your job, So, but again, those things can happen even while you're doing a postdoc. So I wouldn't worry too much. I think there are just too many opportunities out there for folks to explore. And the best part is you won't feel stuck. You don't like something, you can always move on to something better. So it's not like, oh, it's difficult to move, like, oh, I'm in this academic lab and I can't go from here unless because I might get a bad repo. So those kind of insecurities are definitely less in industry.
Cool, thank you. Maybe we can open up the questions first before going forward. Any burning questions out there?
I think there's a question in the chat box.
For Ritu?
Yeah, the question is addressed to me. I read the question. Do you think biotech manufacturing in the US will be a quickly growing sector in the long run? Will biotech manufacturing shift towards Asia like other types or less high-tech manufacturing had historically done? That's a super good question. First of all, there's no doubt that biomanufacturing is the thing. I mean, there is just so much awareness due to climate change, and everyone wants to go the green way, whether you are in textiles or you're in biomaterial or you're in foods. That's the thing, because you're seeing it around you, right? You're seeing every day how weather change is impacting all of us. So it's just so huge right now, and investors are pouring in money everywhere. So, and we are really, really short of biomanufacturing. So it will grow in the US. I'm not seeing big signs of things changing in the US, and I really wonder why. Although there are a few companies that I know are trying to build in the US, in the Midwest, in places like North Carolina. Will it move to Europe? Will it move to Asia? Probably. I know a lot is happening in India. There are a lot of biomanufacturing good stuff happening in India. But right now, I think the big hubs is Europe. There's a lot of biomanufacturing in Europe, and of course in places like India, it's really growing. I really hope it grows in the US, but for whatever reason, that is not as fast as it should be. But it has to increase, and it is increasing in the world.
Cool. One subject that might be of interest to everybody is how many stocks you get and the equity piece of it when you're getting in early. And talk about stocks and investing. And when you leave a startup, what happens to those? Do you get to take them with you? The good and the bad and the ugly.
I can go for that.
Yeah.
So first of all, most companies will give you, most startups will give you good stocks, good equity stocks. That's really a very attractive thing. And generally there is a vesting period of 4 years, and 2 years is after 1 year you will start vesting, and then 4 years you will vest all your total stocks. And I think that's what attracts a lot of people. Get your stocks, start buying them as soon as they're vested. That is what I would say, because the more time you spend in buying your vested stocks, the more tax money on the stocks you would have to pay. So there's a whole lot of stuff there. One thing I would say, that there is a general impression that startups don't pay well. I don't know from where that came. I don't think it's really true. Startups do pay very well. I think what happens is probably in bigger companies, the big companies pay bonuses. And so the gross salaries generally, if you look at big companies versus startups, it's generally in the same range. But where it differs is that startups will not give you a bonus, and they will give you equity, which is substantial. And big companies, the equity it's a different thing, right? But you will get bonus. But generally it's 4 years, and 4 years company vesting starting from 1 year. And the earlier you get in, the lower are the stock price, the lower is the stock price, what you call the option. The later you get in the game, the stock prices increase. So your chances of getting super rich is lower if you get into a late stage company.
Yeah, so yeah, at Alonis, no stock options there. In Inscopix, we didn't have stock options at my level when I joined the company. A year later, the company decided to give stock options to, so at the beginning it was just the leadership team, and then later on they decided to give everyone stock options. Some companies will use, it's like a trade, we don't have, sometimes you'll hear we don't have the money to pay you at X, because these small companies are competing against the other big companies for talent, but in exchange for your salary, we'll give you a whole bunch of stock options. So sometimes that's a play, and each person, as Ritu just says, you're given a strike price that's dependent on where you come in. So the earlier that you come in, you have a cheaper strike price. The later you come in, it's more expensive, and then the number is dependent on the level you come in as the higher your level within the company, usually get more stock options. So when you leave the company, and they might be different at different companies, we have 90 days to buy the stock options at the strike price, right? So we put our money into the stock options, and then you wait for a liquidating event, IPO or acquisition, and you cash out. Yeah, and then to benefits. I think there was some note about what kind of benefits. At the beginning when I joined, our company just transitioned from unlimited vacation to limited vacation. The company, I think there was, if I remember, there was, it was unclear how you'd actually pay someone out when someone leaves the company. So if you're at a company and you have 2 weeks of vacation left, they pay you out. But what do you do when you have unlimited vacation? So we went to the vacation, but I'd look into, I'd say the most recent benefit you probably should pay attention to, because it makes a big difference on lifestyle, and it's, as a result of COVID, is the ability to work remote or hybrid. If you're in a lab, you're probably gonna have to go in 5 days a week. But personally, I don't need to be, I'm on the computer a lot, so I don't need to go into the lab or the company. So I'm in San Francisco, and the company's in Mountain View now, and so we have a hybrid schedule where anchor day is 1 or 2 days a week, and so that's had a remarkable impact on my work-life balance at home, knowing that I don't have to deal with 101 Bay Area traffic during rush hour times. So that that's something to pay attention to when you transition to academia. If you want that kind of work-life balance, some companies, they advertise this now. It's yes, it's a remote, so we give hybrid working conditions, or you only have to be on site for 2 days, and some people do find that attractive. And then there's, of course, everyone's trying to recruit, so there's finder's fees, which are nice benefits.
Awesome, thank you. Björn, thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts is in the current company, I don't have any. I have a good salary, and I mean, good for a small company. And we get a 20% retirement on top, which I think is a is a good one, especially coming from a postdoc or academic part. But I have been thinking a lot, because we're about to spin out a company, Leiden Biomedical Technology, and so I had to read a lot about all these different things, and it's kind of a world on its own. But yeah, definitely the story that Chris Ritu was saying, it depends on what size of the company is. And in our case, we had to kind of, between the founders, see what shares we have to give each other. And because it's a spin out, some will go to the Leiden Measurement Technology company. And then how do we recruit other senior people into it? And you have to give them a chunk of it, sometimes 10, 15% of it. And then also there could be people that work on You don't give them a salary in the beginning, but you give them sweat equity. Like, you know, the more they do, they get a little bit more shares, so they work for the shares. So this is the kind of thing that I'm totally new by, and listening to Ritu and Chris, it's like, you know, gives me a little bit more insight. Yeah, so for me, it's still a new thing, but it's very interesting. In the beginning, I thought, oh, I don't want to learn this stuff. I just want to do my cool technology development. But
yeah,
you know, you have to get into it, and it starts to become more interesting.
Cool. Hey, thank you so much. You know, it's 7:30, top of the hour. I want to be very respectful of time, your speakers' time. They all have families and kids and stuff, and also the audience. Thank you so much, Chris, Ritu, Björn, for your time and all your experiences here. Tennessee, this wouldn't have happened without you. Thank you so much. And audience, tune in. We'll be having an event once a month. Keep coming back. We will be talking about startups, everything about it.
And one more thing, we will put the recording on our YouTube channel. And
yeah.
So there was a question somebody asked me. But thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Naresh, for this opportunity. And I just want to say, go and check our website. There are a lot of open positions, and I'm sure you will find something that would fit you. So don't shy away from applying. Please do that. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.